What's going on, everyone? Welcome back, and specifically, welcome back to this way too early 2019 fantasy football mock draft. And I don't know about you guys, but every single year it seems like the fantasy football offseason lasts longer and longer for me. And I get that itch to get back into fantasy earlier and early every single year. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. As you can see, I've got the setup pretty much ready to go on FantasyPros, PPR scoring format, snake type of draft, 12 teams drafting out of the fifth position. As far as the roster is concerned, standard. One quarterback, two running backs, two wide receivers, a tight end, a flex, and then several bench spots. So with all of that set, I say let's start up this draft. Now, obviously, a couple of quick notes while this loads. These rankings are still very early on. They're going to change after the NFL draft. They're going to change after injuries. And obviously, these draft picks are all based on the rankings being done by a computer. So it's probably going to be a pretty quick draft, but I'll still go through my picks and my thought process behind it, treat it as if it were an actual draft. But enough of that. Let's look at the big board. Who's still left? The first couple of picks were Gurley, Barkley, Zeke, and Kamara. I don't think fast forward to June or July, Gurley will still be that top pick, obviously, with all those concerns about the knees and the arthritis. But for now, we go best available player, and I think that's Christian McCaffrey, no doubts about it. I like what he can do better than Melvin Gordon. He's a younger, faster version of him. Had a great breakout season last year. I'm going to keep rolling with him, especially after the loss of Devin Funchess. I think he will have more targets in Carolina. But now let's look at some of the players drafted afterwards. We had have to scroll down because it was so many picks being made all at once. Hopkins, Melvin Gordon, Devontae Adams, James Conner, Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, Julio. I guess a couple quick notes. I don't think we're going to see Antonio Brown this early on in our actual drafts after the Oakland trade. I realize the targets are going to be there like crazy, but I think he'll probably be an early second round to mid second round wide receiver. Then let's see, Le'Veon Bell, late first round. That's probably pretty accurate. Julio, Odell, Dalvin Cook. I think that's really early for Dalvin Cook. Early second round. Kelsey, Michael Thomas, Nick Chubb, Joe Mixon, Zach Ertz. Personally, I wouldn't take a tight end this early on, but that's just me. I think you can have good value later on with guys like O.J. Howard, Hunter Henry. But let's look again at the big board, see who is still left. After getting Christian McCaffrey in the first round, we are picking probably between Tyreek Hill and David Johnson. Those are the top two rated players here. Let's see who's actually still left in a more in-depth look. We do have Juju Smith, George Kittle, Mike Evans, AJ Green, Aaron Jones, probably the guys that I'd be considering. Honestly, I didn't think David Johnson would still be here. I think this late in the second round, he's a steal. Obviously, he had a down year last year, but if the Cardinals do go ahead, draft Kyler Murray, I think that will help David Johnson. It would be between him and Tyreek Hill, but I just think the value of these top-notch running backs and being able to get a running back one, which is still what I see David Johnson as, in this point in the second round, it's something I can't pass up on. So that's where I'm going. Two great running backs, guys that are RB1s, guys that can absolutely catch passes like no other. But now let's turn our attention again through our third round pick. A guy that I mentioned still here, Mike Evans. I love that. This draft is going better than I could have planned. Obviously, probably won't be this lucky when the real thing comes along. But Mike Evans, I was considering him in the second round. I think with the departures of guys like Humphreys and Deshaun Jackson, targets will be aplenty for Mike Evans. In a make-or-break year for Jameis Winston, he is going to be looking at his top target. To me, that is Mike Evans. That's the easy pick. But let's look at the guys that were drafted over David Johnson, Hill, George Kittle, Hunter Henry. Whoa, way too early for Hunter Henry. Aaron Jones, AJ Green, Juju Smith, Devonta Freeman, Leonard Fournette. Freeman's an interesting guy. Two pretty much injury-plagued years in a row now. Even with Tavon Coleman gone, what's going to happen with Freeman? Is he going to be worthy a third-round pick? Is he someone you can rely on to stay healthy? We know that Atlanta offense is going to be firing, but I think he's still a big question mark at this point. So I'm going to go, like I said, back to the big board and go with my guy, Mike Evans here. I absolutely love the pick. I think he's going to be a really reliable wide receiver number one. Very happy with that choice. Let's look at some of these other guys now that were selected. Afterwards, Patrick Mahomes after Mike Evans. I wouldn't draft a quarterback this early on. T.Y. Hilton, Amari Cooper, Thielen, Keenan Allen, David Montgomery, who's still a free agent, Damian Williams late in the third round. I think that's good value. That probably won't be happening anymore in our June, July drafts. Then Derrick Henry, Robert Woods, Sony Michel, Marlon Mack, Diggs, Julian Edelman, and Brendan Cooks. I don't think Diggs will last this long either in most drafts. But looking at some of these top guys, I'm going to go back to this more in detailed list. Chris Carson, Philip Lindsay, Kerryon Johnson still available. I'm not going to lie, Kerryon Johnson is a guy that I really like to potentially have a breakout year. Let's go to our wide receivers. And we are looking at the following guys for wide receivers with Kenny Golladay, Cooper Kupp, Allen Robinson, Corey Davis, Alshon Jeffrey, Doug Baldwin. I'm not going to lie, I really like Doug Baldwin. The question is, what do we value more here? Going a wide receiver 2 or a flex that can potentially be a running back number 1? To me, I go running back heavy. For that reason, I'm going Kerryon Johnson. I doubt Doug Baldwin will still be there when I go to my next selection. But to me right now, like I said, I think Kerryon Johnson is going to be a great running back this upcoming year. So let's see what's left. Well, I stand corrected. Doug Baldwin is still available somehow. And like I said, things couldn't have broken better for me in this draft. Obviously, this is still on paper, but I'm getting guys that I am really high on this year. Heck, even DJ Moore is still out there. But for now, I'm going with Doug Baldwin. Obviously, he was hurt for a long period of time last season, but when he was back fully healthy, I think we all saw that Baldwin is a stud, especially in PPR. So I'm loving that. Let's see what happens next with our situation here. In the 6th round now, the top suggestions are Russell Wilson, Tyler Boyd, Sammy Watkins, Mike Williams. I'm still not going quarterback quite yet. I'm going to go at either wide receiver here. I might consider tight end depending on who's available. Let's see. We have still got the following names with Eric Ebron, Evan Ingram, Delaney Walker, Trey Burton, Jack Doyle, to name a few. I do like Evan Ingram, potentially in New York with Odell Beckham gone. Maybe I can get him in the following round. I think getting someone like Tyler Boyd is better value. I do think AJ Green, a little bit of an injury risk. If he gets hurt, I think Tyler Boyd is going to be very valuable yet again. Heck, even with AJ Green there, he was very valuable. So for that reason, I am going to go in Tyler Boyd. Honestly, he is the highest remaining wide receiver that I have left here on the board. So for that reason, I'm going with him. And then we can turn our attention to maybe some quarterbacks, to some tight ends. And we did mention Evan Ingram. He is still there. Eric Ebron as well. Matt Ryan, a quarterback. I probably would have targeted Cam Newton, honestly, if he was still there, to get that quarterback running back combination, something that I am a big fan of. But for now, I'll stay put. I think it's more valuable to get a guy like Evan Ingram at the tight end position, just because it's a big fall off afterwards. So that's exactly what I'm going to do here. Get Ingram to start rounding out the top of this starting roster, and then look at who is still available. Jared Goff, as far as a quarterback suggestion. Phillip Rivers still there. Carson Wentz. I'm not going to lie, I do like Carson Wentz. I think if he is fully healthy, he can go ahead and be a reliable quarterback. Heck, Tom Brady is still available. You know, obviously at the age he is, he's not putting up monster seasons, but he's a reliable play for the most part. The Gronkowski retirement definitely hurts the value a little bit. So let's look at some of these potential flex and bench options that we could consider. Tavon Coleman, Kenyon Drake, LaShawn McCoy, just naming off a few of the guys based on these rankings. Carson Wentz. So what I think I'm going to do is go with Carson Wentz next round if he's still there. If not, a guy like Jack Doyle is someone that I like. And this round, go with someone like either James White or Kenyon Drake. I do think I'd probably prioritize Drake after Frank Gore went ahead and left. So for that reason, I'm going to go with Drake here. And I have loaded up on running backs. Absolutely love it. I think that is something that's going to pay off in the long run. We see it every single year. Running backs are the commodity to own. Now Carson Wentz still there. Just because I don't know what's going to happen, I'm going to go ahead get him right now. To me, this is probably still early in terms of selecting him, but I do think we will see a normalization of these rankings as we get closer to the actual season. Eric Ebron still available. Makes me start to second guess that Evan Ingram selection, but no worries. I love the roster so far, not going to lie. Looking at some of these other names, again, at this point, we're pretty much turning our attention to the bench. We're not going to look at the defense and kicker positions too much. Probably get another round or so and call it a day. So let's go back. At this point, we really have to do some scrolling. Some of these names: Westbrook, Michael Gallup, Marquise Goodwin, John Brown, Humphreys. I would have been a big fan of Humphreys if he stayed in Tampa Bay, but he's on that Tennessee offense, and that's not an offense that I am a big fan of, honestly. I do like Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I think he can have a nice year depending on what the Packers do in the draft. I think he was a guy that was coming onto the scene late in the season. He was building that chemistry with Aaron Rodgers. So I'm going to go ahead, take a shot on him. Obviously, his value takes a little bit of a hit if someone like, let's say, DK Metcalf gets drafted by the Packers later on. But for now, keeping on with this, I see a guy, Nyheim Hines, that is available. He's not a bad PPR option if you're desperate for a play at the flex position or for a running back when you have a bunch of guys on bye weeks. But continuing to scroll down this list, Zay Jones, Albert Wilson, Dante Moncrief. I do think Moncrief could be an interesting play signing with Pittsburgh and Antonio Brown being gone. James Washington could be the guy. But I do think Moncrief is a little bit more established. So I'm going to go ahead, take a flyer on him. And at this point, that's pretty much what we're doing. Let's make one or two more selections and then wrap this thing up. I did mention I do like Jack Doyle as a potential backup tight end if things don't work out. I'm going to snag him at this point, and then make one last selection, and that will be it. And I will go with Ito Smith of Atlanta with Coleman gone. We don't know what's going to be the situation with Devonta Freeman. Can he stay healthy or not? So that's going to be the last selection here. And with that, let's recap this roster. Carson Wentz, Christian McCaffrey, David Johnson, Mike Evans, Doug Baldwin, Evan Ingram, Kerryon Johnson. Then the bench: Boyd, Kenyon Drake, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Moncrief, Jack Doyle, Ito Smith. So a couple things. I do think the running back is the strength of this team, and that's what I usually try to go ahead and model most of my teams after, just because I think the wide receiver position is always so deep and one that you can address easier during free agency. Carson Wentz would have liked to see that quarterback running back combination like I mentioned before, but I still think Wentz will be a reliable guy if he can stay healthy. Evan Ingram, I think I got decent value for him considering Odell is gone in that offense. He'll be that security blanket for Eli. Tyler Boyd, I think he's a starting caliber wide receiver. If this was a two-flex type of format, he'd be a starter. Kenyon Drake obviously had a very poor season last year, but pretty much a guy that I just took a flyer on. Same with the remainder of these guys. I do like the value for Ito Smith really late on. So honestly, an initial maybe ranking for this squad, maybe a B, potentially a B plus, depending on how Kerryon Johnson develops. So for that reason, I'm a fan of this. If things played out like this come June, July, or August, I would have zero problems. But let me know what you guys thought. Did you like these selections? Did you guys think I reached on some guys? Were there guys here that you didn't have ranked as high, or guys that you have issues with? Let me hear it. And I'll be doing more of these videos as we go along, addressing more of these players as we go along. So keep an eye out for that. But for now, just let me hear it in the comment section. And as always, if you enjoyed, make sure to like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in future videos.